Hey, bold and the beautiful fans. Right now, there's a conversation happening all over soap social media, on fan forums, in comment sections, in group chats, and it is the same conversation over and over again. Which characters on B&B are just not working anymore? Which ones have fans either reaching for the fast-forward button, skipping episodes entirely, or just straight-up rage posting about online? Because look, Bold and the Beautiful has a 30-minute runtime. That is not a lot of real estate. When you factor out the opening credits and the commercial breaks, you are looking at maybe 19 minutes of actual story content per episode. So, every single character who takes up screen time had better be earning that spot. And right now, there are several who are absolutely not earning it. It's Belinda from Soap Dirt, and today we are going through the characters that fans consistently say they want off the canvas, and we're going to talk about exactly why the audience has turned on them so hard. But first, please hit subscribe if you're not already following us, because you do not want to miss a single episode. And just to be crystal clear before we get into it, this is not about the actors. These are talented people doing their jobs. This is entirely about the characters, the writing, and what the fans are saying out loud on soap social media and on every B&B forum you can find. Okay, let's get into it. The first character we have to talk about, and honestly the one that generates probably the most consistent complaints across every platform, is Steffy Forrester. Now, look, when they recast this character and brought him back into the Forrester Creations world, there was potential there. Brooke and Ridge's son coming into his own, figuring out his place in the family legacy, navigating the fashion world. That could have been interesting. That could have been genuinely compelling. Instead, what we got was one of the most insufferable, smug, entitled little screen presences that Bold and the Beautiful has served up in a long time. And again, not the actor's fault. This lands squarely at Brad Bell's feet, and the writing room that apparently decided the best version of Steffy Forrester was an arrogant, smirking brat boy who acts like the entire building was built for him personally. From basically the moment RJ showed up, he started pursuing Elektra, which fine, attraction happens, people fall for people who are taken, that is not inherently a character flaw. But here's the thing, RJ knew Elektra was in a serious relationship with Will. He knew it. And what did he do? He went to Will, looked him in the eye, and made this whole deal about how they were not going to be rivals the way their fathers were. He invoked Ridge and Bill. He made it sound like he was above all that petty competition. And then he turned around and was an absolute jerk to Will almost immediately. He goaded him. He trash-talked him. He kept deliberately pushing Will's buttons and then playing innocent when things escalated. And fans saw through it completely. Will sucker punched him at one point, and honestly, the fan reaction was largely, yeah, he had that coming. When your audience is rooting for the guy who threw the punch over the guy who got hit, you have a writing problem. Bill Spencer himself told Will good job for the punch, and the audience largely agreed. That is telling. And yes, Steffy Forrester was pouring gasoline on the situation, absolutely. Ivy's meddling made everything worse. But here is the key point. Ivy's manipulation only worked because RJ was already primed to be manipulated in that direction. A genuinely decent person with actual integrity would have shut that down. RJ did not. He leaned into it. He let himself be weaponized against Will, because on some level it served what he wanted. That is not a victim. That is a willing participant. And fans are not buying the idea that RJ is somehow a sympathetic figure in this triangle. The audience has made up its mind on him, and the verdict is not great. Now, let's talk about Sheila Carter, because this is a situation that is genuinely complicated, and I think the show kind of wrote itself into a corner with her. Look, Kimberlin Brown is a legend. Full stop. She has given this show some of its most iconic villain moments over the decades. But what Brad Bell tried to do with the Sheila redemption arc was, to put it kindly, a reach. Sheila tried to murder Steffy. She shot her own son Finn. She has done things that are simply not forgivable in the context of a show that also wants you to root for family and love and second chances. You cannot have it both ways. You cannot have a character do what Sheila has done and then ask the audience to get behind her romance with Deacon and feel good about it. Some fans went along for the ride because Deacon and Sheila had a weird, undeniable chemistry, but deep down, everyone knew the foundation was rotten. And now Deacon has moved on with Taylor, which, okay, fine, that is its own conversation, but where does that leave Sheila? She has been shoved off screen since the breakup. We are hearing about some new roommate situation, and look, the speculation is flying about who that might be, but the bottom line is this. What is the actual story for Sheila Carter right now? What is her purpose on this canvas in the current moment? Without going back to her old ways, the scheming, the threatening, the shooting people, she is kind of just there. She is a character without a function. And on a 30-minute soap where every minute counts, a character without a function is a problem. A lot of fans are saying at this point, just leave her off screen. Let Kimberlin Brown come back for a big sweeps moment if the story calls for it. But stop trying to shoehorn Sheila into a reformed person narrative that the history of the character simply cannot support. Okay, and now we need to talk about Remy Price because the fan reaction to this character coming back has been something else. When Remy left, the general consensus was, good riddance, never come back. What he did to Elektra was genuinely awful. Creating deepfake nude images of a girl who trusted him is not a gray area. That is not a misguided mistake that can be explained away. That is predatory, violating behavior. And yet Brad Bell brought him back, and the writing is trying to frame what Remy did as not that big of a deal. Characters are saying things in dialogue that essentially minimize and excuse what happened. And fans are not having it. They are actively rejecting the premise that Remy Price deserves rehabilitation on this show. Christian Weissman is a good actor. We are not debating that. This is purely about the character and the writing choices being made. Remy was never designed to be a long-term character. He came in as a villain, as a threat, as someone who was supposed to disrupt Elektra's world and then be gone. Trying to pivot him into a romantic lead for Dee is not landing because the audience cannot get past what he did. And the fact that the show is framing his behavior as something rooted in being closeted, using that as an explanation if not an excuse, feels tone-deaf in a way that is genuinely uncomfortable to watch. It trivializes both the harm he caused Elektra and the experience of LGBTQ+ characters on this show. Fans have been vocal about this. They do not want Remy near Dee. They do not want him redeemed. They want him gone. Some fans have even suggested that it would have made more sense to bring RJ back as a gay character who could be paired with Dee, and honestly, the fact that that idea got traction online tells you something about how strongly people feel about Remy specifically. Nobody wants that character on their screen. Now, Elektra herself is someone fans are increasingly frustrated with, and I know that one might be a little more controversial to say out loud, but the receipts are there if you go look at the fan forums. The complaints about Elektra tend to center around a few specific things. First, the whining. She is written as pouty and self-absorbed in a way that makes it hard to sympathize with her even when she is theoretically in the right. Second, and this is a big one, she never came clean to Will about everything that happened with RJ. The kissing, the leading on, the back and forth. She let Will operate without the full picture while she was, if we are being honest, keeping her options open. That is not a heroine move. Fans see it for what it is. And then there is how she treated Dylan, which a lot of viewers found genuinely hard to watch. Dylan had been living on the street. She was in a bad situation. She needed help. And Elektra's reaction to Dylan staying in a spare room above Will's garage, not even in the main house, a spare room above the garage, was to be nasty and mean and bullying from basically day one. Knowing Dylan's circumstances, knowing how bad things had been for her, and still choosing cruelty. That is hard to come back from in terms of audience goodwill. The moment Elektra called RJ sweet while talking to Dylan, fans absolutely lost it in the comments. RJ, who has been deliberately nasty to Will over and over again, who has been pursuing your boyfriend's girlfriend, is sweet? That kind of tone-deaf dialogue makes fans feel like the writers are not even watching the same show the audience is watching. And when that disconnect gets too wide, you lose people. The complaints about Elektra get particularly loud whenever she has back-to-back episode presence, and the calls for less screen time, or none at all, are consistent and growing. Carter Walton is another one that comes up a lot, and I think the fan frustration with Carter is a little different in nature from the others on this list. Because fans do not necessarily dislike Carter, a lot of them actually like him. The problem is that the show is wasting him. Lawrence St. Victor is a genuinely talented actor, and Carter as a character has had some genuinely great moments on this show. His relationship with Quinn was compelling. That was a pairing that had real heat and real emotional complexity. And then it just evaporated. The Carter and Hope pairing never quite landed for a lot of viewers, partly because of the circumstances that brought them together. The whole Forrester takeover situation left a bad taste, and partly because the show tried to do this retroactive rewrite where suddenly Carter had secretly been in love with Hope for years, which, no, that was not established. That was not something viewers had seen built. And when you ask an audience to accept a retcon that contradicts what they actually watched, a lot of them just will not do it. And now Carter is supposedly a newlywed with Daphne. They're supposedly working on starting a family, and yet we barely see them. We barely see him. Carter keeps showing up to serve as a prop in other people's storylines. He validates someone else's decision. He delivers news as a lawyer. He stands in the background of a Forrester family moment. And then he disappears again. That is not how you use a character of his caliber. Fans are not asking for Carter to be removed necessarily. They are asking for him to actually be written for, and that frustration is completely valid. And while we are at it, the Thomas Forrester situation deserves a mention because fans are genuinely annoyed about that. Brad Bell made this whole big production about Thomas coming back. It was built up like a significant return, like something was finally going to happen with this character that the audience has always had complicated feelings about. And then it was a couple of episodes, and he was gone again. Fans felt strung along. When you hype a return and then deliver almost nothing, you burn goodwill, and B&B does not have an unlimited supply of goodwill to burn right now. The bottom line here is simple. Bold and the Beautiful is working with approximately 19 minutes of story content per episode. Every character on that canvas needs to be earning their time. Characters who have the audience reaching for the remote. Characters who are recycled from bad storylines without genuine rehabilitation. Characters who are being underwritten to the point of invisibility. All of them are taking up space that could go to characters and stories that fans actually want to see. The solution is not to pile on more cast additions, especially not irredeemable ones that are already generating backlash. The solution is to be ruthless about who is serving the story and who is just cluttering the canvas. Fans know what they want. They are telling the show exactly what they want, loudly and constantly, on every platform available. The question is whether Brad Bell and the writing room are actually listening. Time will tell. Thank you so much for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you do not want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.